All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Tuesday, December 31st, 2024. Happy New Year's Eve. At midnight, we will head into the new year, and we are literally 24 hours away as this episode drops at noon, away from the quarterfinals game, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl matchup between Texas and Arizona State. This is going to be our full Texas-Arizona State preview, keys to victory, and final prediction episode before the big game, and then we will have our immediate reaction to that game following the game. Jake, 2025 around the corner. I know you and we already kind of discussed some New Year's resolutions or anything like that. One thing that I did want to mention as well, as we go into the new year and the college football season wraps up, this show ain't going anywhere. We're going to be here for basketball season. We're going to be here for baseball season, softball season. During the summer, when there's no sports going on whatsoever, we're going to be coming up with some sort of ideas and something of some sort of content to give you. They may not be 45 to an hour, long episodes, but there'll be something. And so we will keep giving you your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson. And Jake, Happy New Year's to you. And any big plans tonight as the ball will drop?
We're going over to our friend's place, to their new house for a little, New Year's Eve party / kind of housewarming party.
Okay.
And so that should be fun. I know there'll be a lot of drinks involved. Typically, it doesn't end well for me when I hang out with this group of people.
I have those friends. Yeah.
Yeah, me.
Bad influences.
Yeah, no. So I'm sure we will be starting out the new year fun. I know we'll be watching that Boise State Penn State game, and so I have today and New Year's off, so I get a nice little another work break. I basically didn't work at all last week because I had Tuesday, Wednesday off. I took Thursday, Friday off because we were in Texas. And so I kind of enjoy this part of the year where I get a long break before I hit what is my busy season and my schedule gets a little more hectic.
Yeah. And if anybody needs to get their taxes done, send them over to Jake. He'll
I don't do taxes. I do audits.
I don't
financial statement audits of companies. I'm not the IRS. Everyone assumes when you say you do audits that you are auditing people. We audit companies that hire us to audit them because they need it, because they have debt or they need to get grants in their nonprofit. Just want to clear that up. I'm not going to come after you in the comments. If you didn't file your taxes, I don't really care.
You're one of the good guys, I guess. You could say. You're one of those defense attorneys that actually only represent people who are innocent in the crimes that they're accused of doing.
Yes, and if we find fraud, we report it to the company. They decide what to do.
Yeah, you're the Lincoln Lawyer, Jake, of auditors.
Great show for anyone who hasn't seen it. Great show on Netflix.
Yeah, not the Matthew McConaughey movie. Yes, watch that. That's also a good movie. But we were talking about the Netflix series that is currently out. So, but anyway, Jake, getting into this Texas-Arizona State Peach Bowl matchup. Texas, for those who did not listen to earlier episodes this week, we first of all highly encourage you to do so. Like, share, subscribe, get your alerts on so you don't miss any of our episodes. But mentioned that Texas is trying to become the first program in college football history to win all 6 New Year's 6 bowl games. This will be the first time Texas has played in the Peach Bowl and their first opportunity to win it.
Yeah, this is not a stadium we were accustomed to see them playing in, and now they're playing in it again. We hope to see them play in it a third time this year. And so I guess it's nice to get to see some games down south. It always felt like their bowl games were either the Alamo Bowl, which I didn't want to see them in because it was the Alamo Bowl, or they were playing in California or somewhere far away.
Yeah.
This one is a destination I think I'll be able to get down to eventually, whether that be for an SEC title game or if they're in the playoffs and playing there. But just kind of a cool thing for the program to get to do. Texas has their hands in a lot of the history books, so it wouldn't be anything that crazy. But just kind of cool of seeing, as bad as we've seen of that decade plus of football that we've talked about tirelessly of how bad it was, you and I, who aren't that old, have still seen a ton of success because we've seen a lot of those bowl game wins.
Oh, yeah.
These various bowls.
Yeah, well, and also, namely the Rose Bowl, I've coined it the VY Bowl, Vince Young Bowl. So, where he has made many a memory of mine as a Texas Longhorn fan in my early adolescence, middle school age range. Just watching him, beat Michigan. Very next year, goes in there, beats the home team, USC. I made a trip up to the Rose Bowl whenever I was living in California. After I graduated high school, I was kind of in that in-between stage of my life of like, I don't really want to go to college. I don't really want to get a job, but I also don't want to stay at home anymore. I want to kind of go out and explore a little bit. I moved out to California for about 6 months, and I made the trip up to Pasadena just on a day off that I had nothing else to do, which I didn't have a lot to do there anyway. I was kind of just hippieing it in California, but went up to the Rose Bowl and took a picture of the stadium, and I tagged Mac Brown in it. I said, I've named it the VY Bowl, just in case you're wondering. And he actually liked and responded to that tweet. It was one of the first times I ever actually had a blue check mark pop up on my notifications, and it was Mac Daddy himself. And my whole year was made. I still remember that very vividly. And so
I remember that vividly because we were best friends at that point already. Actually, that trip ended, or that time you living there ended with me flying out there, us going to Cowboys training camp, and then us moving you back in your little Pontiac Sunfire, barely making it up the hills, driving all the way from California to Texas to 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah, I think we had about maybe $40 to our names combined. By the end of that trip,
we had like no money left, and you didn't have Venmo then, so it was a little uncomfortable of like, are we gonna make it home? And it was like
running on
what can we eat that is nothing? And it's like, let's have some chips for lunch. Things got a little tight on that trip, but hey, that's a trip we'll always remember. We might have to pull a couple stories out from that eventually.
That was a trip that will never be forgotten. I have a very fun one while we were in Oxnard, and we were talking to a group of people who mistaken me for a Cowboys football player, which has never happened and never will happen ever again. But anyway, moving on, Texas, Arizona State. That's what this podcast is all about. Jake, going into this game, just give us a quick breakdown. Texas is 12.5-point favorites. The over-under set at 51.5. As a betting man, do you like those numbers?
Yes, I do a lot. I haven't been this confident in Texas winning a game since they played Clemson last week. I mean, I was very confident than beating Clemson, and I'm more confident than beating Arizona State, yet the line is the same. And Texas covered against Clemson. To me, to beat Texas, you're going to have a great quarterback play great. Clemson had a good to great quarterback play great, and they lost. Now, granted, their defense didn't hold up their side of the bargain. That was part of it. But it didn't work out for them, or your Georgia. Anytime I talk about what you need to beat Texas, the caveat is be Kirby Smart in Georgia, but no one else is Georgia right now in the college football landscape.
And we don't have to worry about them until a possible national championship game.
Yeah, where it'd be a third time against Georgia and a third time at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Hopefully, the third time would beat the charm in that case. But I do love that line. I just, you look at the outcome, and I would pick Arizona State to win like 10% of the time at most. And it's like a vast majority of these games that play out my mind, that simulate in my head, that means absolutely nothing and is typically wrong. They are blowouts for Texas. It takes a lot of Arizona State playing really well, plus Texas playing poorly for them to not only have a chance to win, but just to keep this game within that point spread. And they may keep it close for a while, but still, when you get in the third and fourth quarter and that line of scrimmage depth just starts to mean more and more as you get further into the game, I just have a hard time seeing Texas not pulling away, even if the game's closer than expected early on.
No, I'm completely with you, Jake. I really do think that Texas has an opportunity here to probably have the most comfortable victory of the weekend of any of these games that we have going on. And that's probably why they're slated at the noon time slot and not on the Tuesday night game which would be tonight's game with the primetime game with who was it again? Sorry.
Penn State, Boise State.
Penn State, Boise State, which I don't think that's going to be a blowout either. I think that's going to be I think this round of games is actually going to be fairly decent. I think there are obviously avenues for blowouts in almost maybe all the games, maybe not Ohio State, Oregon. I don't see that one really being a blowout, but I think the other 3 games all have avenues to be blowouts. I don't see there are less avenues to keep this a close loss for Arizona State than it is for Texas just to blow them out overall, in terms of like if the percentages were a Texas blowout victory, a Texas narrow victory, or an ASU win. I think the ASU win percentage would be the lowest amount that you would get out of all those.
Yeah, the Texas blowout percentage is the if you play this game 100 times, you simulate it on the field 100 times. Texas blows them out probably 65-70% of the time, at least.
And are we talking a blowout? For me personally, a blowout is a 2-touchdown game, a 14-point game. It's kind of what I consider a blowout.
Yeah, typically I'd say 7, but not all 14-point games are blowouts. But there are some that are blowouts. All 17+ point games are blowouts. So for me, kind of 17 points is that line with the caveat. A 14-point game can be a bit of a blowout. Kind of like Texas Clemson was in a way.
Yeah, I guess, and you're also thinking maybe I might be putting more so the NFL terms of a blowout in perspective of a 2-touchdown win in the NFL is pretty much a blow. I mean, that game is a handedly won victory in the NFL in terms of, and you don't see 13.5-point spreads on a regular basis, and you've got a 12.5-point spread in this game. In the Penn State game tonight, you've got an 11.5-point spread. So, and we're getting to the final 8 teams that are left playing in the season right now. So, but anyway, Jake, in terms of the health of these 2 teams and how they match up against one another, ASU's wide receiver Jordan Tyson, doubtful, unlikely to play with a clavicle injury. We also had updates yesterday of Isaiah Bond looking good in practice. He's going to get some minutes. He will likely be in the game. Jake Majors looks like he's also headed in the right direction of starting and playing in this game. Also, Trey Wisner, who was banged up in that Clemson game, also expected to play. The only one doubtful to unlikely to play is Cam Williams at right tackle. So Texas getting some key pieces, Arizona State losing some key pieces. I think that's an additional thing that you got to take into account whenever you're looking at this game, and which is already a big mismatch in favor of Texas.
Yeah, and one of their best defensive backs out in the first half because of targeting in that Iowa State game. And for me, that gives Texas a first half chance, which Texas is a very good first half team, a chance to just put this game away early. And a lot of that probably through the air. Arizona State's a decent run defense. Granted, they probably hadn't played a rushing attack quite like Texas, but the passing side of the defense is where they are not as strong. And I think Texas has a lot of ways to attack them with their offense against this defense. And then on the flip side, really the key formula for Arizona State, if they want to make this game close, is going to be time of possession. They need to have it's a 60-minute game. They need to have about 40 minutes of possession for this game to be close, in my opinion.
These 2 teams have an identity that at this point, everybody knows who these teams are. And I don't think if we went down the numbers or, we tried to break it down in terms of just watching these 2 teams play football, how Arizona State has success is getting Cam Scatterbo the ball, whether that be through the passing game or through the running game. However it is that they scheme him open into a game plan is how they have success. And their defense stops the run and forces teams to pass on them. That it probably allows more passing yards against this passing defense in terms of late games where they're already leading. And it's also the Big 12 where you're not going to get a bunch of power run teams going up at you. And so I think that has a lot to play in terms of their statistics and in terms of their team success or lack of success, whether you think of strengths and weaknesses. But when I go in and I just diagnose this game, I go back to thinking of week 2, Texas at Michigan, and Texas came out as the bigger, faster, stronger team. Texas, a couple weeks later against Oklahoma, they came out as the bigger, faster, stronger team. Texas is the only time they have not come out as the bigger, faster, stronger team is against Georgia. Every other game, they have come out as the bigger, faster, stronger team. Arkansas, Texas A&M, they have bullied teams at the line of scrimmage. They've had their way with them, whether that be through their athleticism or their strength or their size. At no point on the field does Arizona win either three of those categories in terms of the attributes of their team. And I, it sounds, you and I sound pretty cocky or however going into this, but I think that's just what the matchup is in front of us.
Yeah, it does. It's not saying it's impossible for Arizona State to win this. It's football. Anything can happen when the game is not played on paper. Just like we did not think that Clemson would have the offensive success that they had. We were wrong in some portions of that Clemson-Texas game. I'm sure Arizona State will prove us wrong in a couple spots of the game. But at the end of the day, when Texas has played teams that when those teams succeed, it involves them dominating the time of possession to win games, which Arizona State's biggest wins either involve them turning over the other team a ton or controlling the clock and turning over the other team. Mm-hmm. You look at Kansas State, one of their biggest wins of the season, without a doubt. They had 37 minutes of possession time to the 23 for Kansas State. K-State still outgained them in that game, 412 to 398, but they had 3 turnovers to Arizona State's 1. You look at Arizona State BYU, they had 35 minutes of possession time to BYU's 25. They were outgained in that game, 440 yards to 401, but they turned them over twice to their 1. Against Iowa State, time of possession was essentially dead even. But Iowa State had 3 turnovers. Arizona State had 0. And for people who watched that game, that they blitzed them in that third quarter to run away with that game. Yeah. It was 24-10 at half as well. And I just don't see Arizona State being able to put up 467 yards and 45 points against Texas, even if Texas turned over the ball 3 times. And so you look at their best games of the season against the best teams they played, how they were able to win those games. And you go, can they really repeat that blueprint against Texas? And the answer in the majority of the cases is going to be no. It's whether or not they can make that 1 in 100 or 1 in 10 chance come true.
Yeah. And so Jake, going into this game, what are ways that you think that Kenny Dillingham is going to game plan for Cam Scatabo to have success against Texas? Because we both know that's kind of the only avenue Arizona State's offense has to get through this Texas defense is for Cam Scatabo to have a collegiately historic game to where everybody looks back on the 2024 quarterfinal game as the Cam Scatabo game. What's going to have to happen for Kenny Dillingham to game plan that into existence?
Well, first off, why not just come out and use him as a decoy to start and do trick plays? Just empty the clip in the first quarter or the first half. Flea flickers, reverses, passes, a ton of play action,
double pass.
Take some deep shots, take some risks in one-on-one coverage, and just try to see if your receiver can make a play and just empty the clip. And then if some of those work, it might open up a little bit of room for Scatabo to find. I think if you just come out and you just try to base a line and just run the football against Texas, they're going to be in for a very long day. I imagine they're going to come out and they're going to have some tricks up their sleeve early in this game, whether that be trick plays, whether that be doing a little bit more play action to start it and just taking some deep shots. If they're guarded, throw it and hope they catch it.
Or pass interference.
Yeah, or go for a pass interference call. Probably attack Malik Muhammad after he struggled against Clemson. And so if I'm, yeah, please do that from a Texas fan, because Malik Muhammad is not going to play that bad again. But if you're Arizona State and you're watching the Texas film, I think that's what you do. You come out and you maybe don't give a heavy dose of Scatabo to start it, and you do other things that will open up lanes for him to run the football and kind of get Texas off balance on defense. I think that's, in my opinion, that's the best way Arizona State could probably go about trying to have some success against this very talented defense.
Defensively, they like to put a lot of safeties out there on the field. They like to have a lot of speed sideline to sideline. I think that also has to do with the conference that they're currently in. They don't typically play a lot of power teams. They play more fast teams. They like to spread the ball out in the Big 12. Texas is very familiar with that style of play, whether that be TCU, whoever you're playing against. And so do you think that they're going to try to pull from an Arkansas, pull from a Georgia and try to emulate that? Or do you think that they just don't have the that caliber of player to even have success playing the style that Arkansas and Georgia had on their defensive side of the ball against Texas.
I think you can pull from Arkansas. You can't pull from Georgia. No one can play Texas like Georgia can on the defensive side of the ball because A, you don't have Kirby Smart. And then B, you don't have the dogs, quite literally, to do what Georgia does against Texas. I think you pull from Arkansas. You pull from what a lot of these middle tier teams that are less talented than Texas do against Texas, where you come out and you just throw a look that you haven't run all year on them. You throw the three high safety look, and you try to throw things like that at them to catch them off guard. The problem is if you do that, I think Texas is now at the point where they can just run you out of it. Because that's one of the ways to deal with that is just run the football. And I don't think they have the front to do that. So if you're Arizona State, you come out on defense and you kind of empty the clip, just like the offense, right? You're going to throw some blitzes out there. You try to make Quinn uncomfortable. You try to force a turnover. I think going for turnovers is the key for the Arizona State defense in this game. You can let Texas rack up 500 yards of offense if they only score 17 points like they did against Georgia. So I guess that's where you kind of mimic the idea of a game plan of we don't really care if they drive the football. We're going to try to stop you in the red zone and we're going to try to turn you over. And then I think that's how Arizona State has to attack the Texas offense. The problem is I don't know if they have the personnel to do it.
Right. And that's where, you can scheme because I think Kenny Dillingham is a phenomenal head coach. I think he's great. He's got a great mind. He's got a great attitude. He has his team obviously believing that they can do some things because they were picked last in the Big 12 preseason. They ended up winning the Big 12. They now have a first round bye going into the college football playoffs for the first time. And so it's like, yeah, this team obviously believes in themselves and Dillingham has instilled that in his team. At some point you run into a buzzsaw that of a team that is, like I said earlier this episode, bigger, faster, stronger, and better in every statistical category and just outmatch you.
They've made their Cinderella run. They're in the Elite Eight. And that's a lot of the times where the team hits the buzzsaw, like you said. And maybe they'll prove us wrong. We're not saying it's impossible for them to win. But when you look at the game on paper, we looked at the game on paper last week and we're like, Texas outmatches Clemson. And it showed on the field. This is a much bigger mismatch.
It is.
And I just don't see how it doesn't play out the same on the field. Texas isn't going to overlook a team once they're in the playoffs. That's just
at this
Texas
point,
is not at that point as a program. So if Arizona State does have success against Texas, it goes to show what a good team they are and how well coached they are under Coach Dillingham.
I think you can overlook if you're Oregon, I think you can overlook a Boise State in week 2 or week 3 or whatever, right? I think it's easier to overlook an opponent that is going to play above their expectation and standard for the regular season, early, middle of the season, what have you, have a slip-up game, a Kentucky over Ole Miss, whatever that looks like. But if you had Oregon playing Boise State this year in the playoffs, which they can, it's not out of the possibility, I think Oregon steamrolls them. I don't think that game is even close because the stakes are so much higher here at the playoff than it is in a week 2, week 3, week 7 game, what have you. So, Jake, let's go ahead, get into our game day predictions. We're going to give you 5 game day predictions. I'm going to start off. We gave an injury report earlier in this episode, also talked about it in yesterday's episode as well. Isaiah Bond is expected to play in this game. I think he scores not only a touchdown in this game, I think he scores the first touchdown of the game for Texas. It might be on a run, might be on a reverse, might be a screen pass, it might be a down the field streak route. I don't know what it's going to be. I do think Isaiah Bond gets in the end zone and he's going to be the first one to score in this ball game for either team.
I think a lot of Texas fans have forgotten how valuable he is to this offense as well. Just because he was a big part of the offense that first half of the season. He was kind of banged up the whole second half of the season, and it just every time he would start to be a little bit healthy, he would re-hurt it. And so if he's back and he's healthy, that is huge for this offense going down the stretch of this playoff run because he opens up a lot and it makes that wide receiver depth that much more scary and obviously the big play potential with him. So if he is back and healthy and not playing at 50%, like it felt like he was against Georgia, that's big for this Texas offense. And because of that, kind of translates into my first kind of game day prediction. I think Quinn has over 350 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. I think Quinn Ewers is going to have a career type game. And all of a sudden the scouts are going to be, there's already being like, okay, he's probably going to go like top of the second round. If Quinn plays really well throughout this playoff run, he could end up back in the top 10 because we both know that is how the NFL works. They want to reach for quarterbacks, and Quinn wants to play himself into a top 10, and he has a chance against a defense that's probably it will be the weakest defense he would see the rest of the way, to just put up a stat line that's unbelievable, and I think he does it.
And, you look at the, the way the NFL looks right now and the quarterback situation, there are going to be a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks in the upcoming drafts, whether it's this year or next year. Jake, I'm going to go ahead, play off that one, kind of like how you played off of my prediction, although this is lower on my list. I do think that Quinn plays and outplays Sam Levitt in every aspect of this game. Earlier this week, if you did not tune in, Sam Levitt went in a press conference and quoted saying, "I'm going to prove to everybody that I am the better quarterback in this game." Well, Quinn Ewers is going to prove you wrong. I think Ewers outplays Sam Levitt in every aspect, whether that's statistical, whether that is just watching it with your own eyes. If you want to do the eye test, Quinn's going to look and feel like the better quarterback, and he's going to go out there and prove that.
Yeah, and I think Arizona State's going to have a rough game offensively. This Texas defense just played by far their worst game of the season. You had players in Jahdae Barron, Michael Taft, kind of the leadership role in that secondary, texting each other the night of the Clemson game that it happened, going, "I've already watched the film. We have a lot to work on." So now that Clemson game is like the worst result for Arizona State, because Texas rolled, their offense is confident, and now you got the number 1 defense in the country who's coming off the game pissed off and wanting to wipe it. And then you have your dumb freshman quarterback come out and give them more ammunition.
Yeah,
I think it's more ammunition for the defense than it is the offense. And so, I think Arizona State's going to have less than 275 total yards. We're going to go back to that trend we basically saw all year, where a team is right around that 250-yard mark.
Yeah. And with that being said, Cam Scatterbo is going to be held under 100 yards rushing.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen last year they did it to Ollie Gordon in the Big 12 finals. When a team is a running back centric team, Texas is pretty good at taking that away.
Yeah.
I mean, even against Georgia, they've taken away. It's been more of the big runs happening here and there. Clemson bursted a couple big runs, but Arizona State doesn't have the offensive line talent that either of those teams have.
Well, that, and I also think, like, if your offense is predicated on one player having success, Texas is very, very good at taking that one player away.
Unless it's a quarterback that can just play out of his mind. That is the one little caveat there. And even then, they're still good at shutting it down for portions of a game like they did. Klubnik was shut down a lot of that first half.
Yeah.
He put a lot of that up in the second half, and obviously that first drive. And so, I think the defense, along with holding them to that low of yardage, they're going to get 5 sacks. Because at some point Arizona State's going to have to just start throwing the football because they're going to be down early. And there's going to be 2 interceptions and a fumble return. And why not? I don't even have this written down here. They're going to get a defensive touchdown as well. Finally get their first defensive touchdown of the season.
No, since Ethan Burke in at week 1 or
their first
3.
Defensive is a UTSA, I think, was the game, because we didn't even really see it happening because we were recording during the end of the game. We were together for that one, and Quinn had gotten hurt, so we weren't really like that happy.
Yeah. And but Jake, bizarre, you lead the nation in turnovers and you have 1 touchdown to show for it. You and I, we've predicted touchdowns for the defense almost every week leading up to this point, but hey,
just like I predicted a Jaden Blue game for like 5 weeks during the season, it didn't happen, and then I predicted it last week, and I go, "Hey, I'm a genius."
Yep,
if you shoot your shot over and over, sooner or later the shot hits.
Hey, like Kobe said, you if I miss 1 shot, I'm going to take 2. If I miss 2 shots, I'm going to take 10. If I miss 10 shots, I'm going to take 100. It doesn't matter. Eventually it's going to fall. And so that's exactly what we're doing.
In the words of MJ, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I thought that was Wayne Gretzky or Michael Scott who said that.
Either way, it works.
Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky. All right, Jake, I think on the offensive side of the ball, though, Texas running backs, speaking of your Jaden Blue call, I think the Texas running backs combined for over 200 yards again. I think a lot of this is going to come in the second half because I think the first half game plan is get the passing game going, build a lead. I think that second half with the lead, it's going to be Wisner, it's going to be Blue, and I think that I love the way Blue ran with protecting the football against Clemson. You could see it whenever he went through a hole, any type of gap. I mean, it was high and tight. It was almost shoved down his throat. He had it so high and tight. I mean, that dude ran with a purpose to not fumble the ball, and I loved every bit of it. In fact, I might go ahead and say with the combined 200-yard rushing game between all Texas running backs, I think Jared Gibson might get himself into the end zone at the end of the game on Wednesday.
We could. I didn't Gibson. I'm not sure. He might have played high school football in Arizona. I'm not 100%.
Did you know that Cade Klubnik played he played high school in Austin?
Oh man, if there's any guys on Arizona State played in Austin, we will know by the end of that game. Let me tell you, and there probably are because there's plenty of guys who were at Texas.
Yeah, there's a handful of former Texas recruits or players for the Longhorns that have transferred over there. So.
Another one of my predictions, I think Texas finally wins a third quarter. I think that's probably something this coaching staff, I know they've been harping on it. They were better in the third quarter against Clemson than some of their other third quarters.
It was still like 2 plays or something that didn't go there.
Yeah, but they still lost that quarter technically.
Yeah,
I don't think the quarter was a disaster. It still wasn't a win in the box score. I think they get that win in the box score this time. I'll throw out a score too. Why not? We're having fun. 14-3. They win the third quarter.
I like it. All right, Jake. ASU might be giving up on field goals at that point in the game, by the way. I do think that Arizona State, I will give this prediction to them. Arizona State will have a successful trick play. That's what I'm going to give them. I don't know when it's going to come. I don't know where it's going to come. I don't know in the form. Georgia has had success against Texas with trick plays. Now they time it perfectly in the most opportune moments of the game. It seems to just work out there in their favor. I think Arizona State, I don't know if it's going to end in a touchdown or not, but I think they get a big play. They switch momentum. They switch, the field, field position game goes in their favor with some sort of big chunk play out of a fake something or trick play of some sort.
Maybe it plays with my last prediction, which is I think Arizona State is going to score a touchdown on their opening drive, and then they will not score another touchdown in the football game. And maybe that comes off a big trick play that gets them down in the red zone or gets them a touchdown. They get some early momentum, and then Texas just kind of shuts it down like they did against Clemson, but they run away with it a little bit more.
All right, Jake, that's going to do our 5 game day predictions. And now we're going to jump into the keys to victory for the Texas Longhorns. Really, I'm going to go above and beyond right here, Jake. Here's our overarching keys to victory. We're going to get more detailed ones, but here's the key to victory for Texas. Don't this thing up. Just don't screw up. Just don't completely
don't beat yourselves.
Yeah.
That's kind of been the key for Texas in every game this season. When games have been closer than they should be, or in the cases where they've lost, it's been a lot of beating themselves.
Yeah.
And so that is just a clear and obvious key. Arizona State does not win a straight up game here. It happens from Texas making errors and making mistakes, and Arizona State either forcing or capitalizing on those.
So here is my first key to victory, Jake. I'll just go through all 3 of them real quickly. Then you can give all 3, and then we'll give our final scores. We'll wrap up this episode. But for me, the D-line and the linebackers have to stay disciplined for how ASU, however they plan to get Scadaboo the ball and game plan him, the defensive line and the linebackers have to stay disciplined, whether that be eye discipline, whether that be play recognition, however that looks for them. They need to be aware and assignment sound football from the defensive line and the linebackers in that front 7, because the ball is going to get to Scadaboo somehow, some way, some shape or form, whether that be through the air, whether that be through the ground, whether that be through an option, whatever that is. The defensive line and the linebackers have to stay disciplined in what they're going to do to prevent that from having as much success as ASU wants it to have. In the passing game, it has to be crisp. It has to lead the offense to start this game off for Texas's offense. You and I, we talked about it in our predictions. We think Quinn Ewers is going to have a good game. He's set up to have success in this game, and that'll determine going forward in the second half, whether this game is going to be continually passing the ball, which probably means Texas isn't having as comfortable as a lead as they would like in the second half, or it'll be the running game where they're just trying to ice this thing out and get to the next round as healthy as possible. Lastly, key to victory, keep Arizona State behind the chains. Don't let them have third and manageable, fourth and manageable. They're going to be aggressive in this game, Jake. Like I said, I think they're going to get away from field goals pretty early on in this game. I think they're going to be forced to go for it on fourth down conversions. Make sure that those fourth down conversion attempts are 4th and 5, 4th and 6. Don't let it be 4th and 1 consistently. Don't let it be, 3rd and 2 on a regular basis. Now, Texas is really good at 4th and 1.
I like 4th and 1 for this Texas defense.
As long as you put Bill Norton and Ethan Burke out there on 4th and 1, I do feel pretty confident in it. So, but those are my keys to victory. Just make sure you keep Arizona State behind the chains as much as you possibly can. Say assignment sound defense. Don't let the trick plays, don't let the over-aggressiveness get to you. And the passing game, if you have success, the team will have success.
Yeah, I want to echo what Tanner said to start. Just don't F it up. That is the key to this game. Texas has a lot of advantages in this game at pretty much at every single position. And so, but got to give our 3 keys. So I came up with 3. It's a little difficult when it's a game like this.
Yeah.
But
actually, it's pretty easy, to be honest.
It is easy, but I just mean more of when they're playing even at Clemson, like there's some key attributes you look at Clemson and go, this is a key to the game. Yeah. Here you it's more of Texas not beating themselves, which I think you'll see with a little bit of my keys. But my first one is if Bond, and I said this kind of earlier in the episode, if Bond is good to go, get him involved early, pass the football often and early. I think in the first half, you can use the passing game and I think Sark, that's his ideal way to win a football game. Pass it a lot in the first half, run up the scoreboard, run the football, and control the game in the second half and coast to a victory. That is what he likes to do. And they've been able to do that at times this year. I think this is a game where they'll be able to do that game plan that Sarkisian likes to pull out, and they will throw it a lot in the first half. My second key is do not turn over the football. Part of that is being ready for Arizona State to throw out some different looks, throw out some blitzes, throw out some confusion, to try to force you into turnovers. Part of that is also just not beating yourself by fumbling it, by Quinn getting pressure and instead of taking a sack or throwing it away, doing those, every now and then you get random WTF interceptions from them, avoiding that. Yeah. And then on the defensive side of the ball, just play with discipline, no stupid penalties, no busted coverages, be ready for trick plays, and just contain your gaps, do your job, trust your teammates. I think that's a key when you play a team that likes to use a running back a lot. You got to trust your gaps as a defensive line. If you're a linebacker, you can't just overshoot it. You got to play with eye discipline, feet discipline, and just trust that your teammates are going to do their jobs rather than trying to play hero ball on the defensive side. The defensive side of the football is a lot about it working as a unit. Mm-hmm. You have guys who make star plays, but you don't want guys playing hero ball on the defensive side. And I think they'll play well in that aspect.
All right, Jake, final predictions going into this game. I think everybody has gotten a very good feel of how we feel going into this game. Talking just how we've spoken about the Arizona State-Texas game. I've got Texas winning this one in a pretty easy victory. A 30-point win is what I'm going to go with, 43-13.
Yeah, I have Texas in a very similar score, 41-10. And I think a lot of that will come in the first half. I think they'll be up 31 or 35-7 at halftime, and then just kind of coast in that second half, just run the football, probably settle for some field goals, probably miss some field goals. And it'll be an ugly second half and people will be melting down, even though the game's put away. And me and you will just be sitting there happy, going, hey, Texas was the only team from the playoffs last year to make the 12-team playoff this year. And they could be in the Final Four for the second time in a row, which would be quite an accomplishment for Steve Sarkisian and this program.
And I will be very much looking forward to watching Ohio State, Oregon, and at the 4:00 game. So that'll be on my game plan following this one after our immediate reaction, which we will come out with after the game on Wednesday. And so with all that being said, Jake, that is going to be our final prediction preview episode of Texas Arizona State in the college football playoff quarterfinals for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Again, that game kicks off at 12 noon. You will get your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Continue spreading the word. We appreciate the growth going into the new year. You guys all have a happy new year. Be safe tonight. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Well, do all the things I wouldn't do probably, because I'm probably not making the best decisions tonight either. But be safe, be careful, make it to tomorrow so you can watch Texas and celebrate. Even if you're a little bit hungover, sitting on the couch.
Might need to set an alarm for that noon game. I can't lie. I might have to set an alarm for that game.
You might have to, as long as the players are not out, celebrating the New Year's in Atlanta, Georgia. I think we'll be all right. So with that being said, I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson again. We appreciate all the support. We love to see you. We will see you tomorrow following the game for our immediate reaction. And with all that being said, as always, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.